Coming up on The Perspective with Mike Sherbino and Julie Stautland, we welcome back to the show two Perspective favorites, a powerhouse couple unlike few others out there in the world of media today. SQuire Rushnell and Louise DuArt Rushnell travel the world spreading the light and love of Jesus through their social media, interviews, books, movies, and most of all, the joys of their amazing marriage. Today, Mike and Julie also get to hear about their latest installment in their God Winks book series.
Well, welcome to The Perspective. And today, Mike, we're talking about the power of the tongue again. You've been talking about it all week.
All week.
Well, all week. And I wanted to ask you, so has anyone given you an encouraging word that you think about?
Well, I've had many, but what comes to my mind today is when I was a young pastor in our first church, there was this big-time executive. I'm thinking, whoa, I was impressed with him. And whenever I would phone him, he would say, are you ready for this?
Okay.
He would say, Michael, my hero, how are you doing?
That's so
And there were
sweet.
days I would be so low, I would call, I have to go through the switchboard.
Everybody needs somebody like that.
Yeah, I'd go through the switchboard and then to his personal secretary, and she'd say, it's Michael Sherbino on the phone. And I could hear all this, and then he'd pick up the phone and do, Michael, my hero. And that stuck with me, and I thought he was a little eccentric, but on the days that I was really flat bottom, that's who I would call.
I need a call like that.
Well, we got people, okay, I'll give you a call like that. Julie, my hero. I got two heroes that are here today.
Yes.
Tell us who's back on the show.
Oh, my goodness. Always so wonderful to have our fabulous friends, SQuire Rushnell and Louise DuArt. You know them from the God Winks and the Dodd Winks.
Yeah.
And they're here to talk about their work and ensuring people know they are loved by God and that God hasn't forgotten us or the world. Welcome back, guys, Louise and SQuire.
Hey!
Yeah.
Hello, Julie.
Hello
Hi, Mike.
from Martha's Vineyard.
And the
Yay!
States.
Yes.
Well, we're really glad you're with us. And I'm saying that a little tongue-in-cheek because we were able to have lunch together a little over a month ago. And SQuire, I don't know if you're aware of this, but you didn't pay. You left me with the bill. And that's been kind of bugging me. So I'll send you your portion
my
in the minute. And you didn't
That's
eat
right,
everything
please.
either, but you still have to pay for it, okay?
It'll be under your doormat tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
There you
Oh,
go.
God.
Oh, my
Hey,
goodness.
we've talked about many of the things that you've done recently, and we're going to talk about that in a few moments. I think of the Hallmark movies and stuff. How come you haven't given my name for one of the Christmas specials? That's another thing. Is there an answer?
Yes.
Well,
That's on our bucket list.
I think so.
Right?
I
We
think
have to
so.
have Mike
Yeah.
in one of the
Yeah. But
one of
you-
the movies.
But you know something? Mike keeps mentioning this,
Yeah.
but what he doesn't realize is that Julie is probably more suited
Yeah.
to a Hallmark
Oh,
movie.
that's true.
You know?
Julie looks very Hallmarky, doesn't she?
Not that they discriminate against
No,
men
no, that
Yeah.
went
in
right
the
to my
Hallmark
heart.
movies, but
Julie's got the look.
they
I'm
do.
up for it.
Yeah.
She's got the
Anytime.
glitz and
I'm
glam,
here.
but
I'm here.
oh well. So, how many Christmas specials have you put together for Hallmark, and what's happening next there?
Well, we've done 4 a Godwink Christmas
Mm-hmm.
movies. Every single one premiered at number 1, and some of them have, I think, had the record on redundancy in terms of the number of viewers that they've had during the Christmas season. We got up to 12.8 million viewers for one show. And so, you put that together with, what you'd do if you had a movie and it was going into theaters, 12 and a half million would be fabulous. So it's a real good, strong reach. And the Godwink brand and the Hallmark brand go together very nicely.
Well, as I'm thinking about that, you've had experience way before that. SQuire, you're the creator of the Schoolhouse Rocks. Okay, we're going back a year or two on that one.
Yep.
And also executive producer of Good Morning America. You should be helping me, okay, with this program. Just tell us about those days, okay?
Well,
if I could just jump in, I actually found your DVD the other day for my kids, Schoolhouse Rocks. I came across it. I mean, they're in their 20s now, but I'm like, I
Oh,
still
great.
have one.
Oh, yeah.
Conjunction, junction.
That's right.
What's your function?
Actually, what is it, 50-year
Oh,
anniversary
yeah,
this
the
year?
50th anniversary
Yeah.
is actually going to be on January 6th, I think, is when we premiered it.
But kids
50
still know
years
it.
ago.
It's like parents pass it down to kids and teachers pass it down to
Yeah.
kids.
So
So
hasn't
it,
been running on television,
not for
I don't think, in 20, 25 years.
right.
But the kids uh, all know about it because
Mhm.
the parents pass it on, and particularly the teachers.
Yes.
And so I think that's just wonderful. Who would have thought
Who would have
that
thought?
50 years ago, these little 3-minute programs in
Mhm.
between the Saturday morning cartoons
That's right.
would teaching parts of speech, or how how a bill goes through our
Mhm.
Congress, or the multiplication tables.
Mhm.
Who would have thought that they would have had that residual, that
Yes.
redundancy, to be able to still be sung by a whole swath of
Mhm.
the generations?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so Louise, you got to take us back a bit. Although you're still, in my eyes, you're a comedian, you're an actor, and you're still super creative, but you're great at impersonations. You used to hang out with Tim Conway, Harvey Korman, and you do acts even in the Niagara region. So tell us
Yes.
about those years and how much fun was that?
Well, I always loved Tim Conway and Harvey Korman, and the Carol Burnett show was it for me. As a kid growing up, when other girls were playing with dolls in the bedroom, I was doing these acting out, doing these sketches with Tim Conway and Harvey Korman. But how wonderful God is to answer the prayers of little girls, because I always prayed that one day I would get to work with them and to be able to do sketches with them. And years later, God, through a miraculous God wink, put
Wow,
me together with
incredible. Yeah.
Tim and Harvey, and we worked together for 12 years, Tim and Harvey, and then another 3 years with Tim alone. And we went all over the country, really,
Yeah.
just
We
doing
spent
some
a
of the
lot of
great.
time in Canada.
We did,
Above
yes.
Toronto, in
Mhm.
the Indian casino. What was that? The Casino Royale?
No, Casino Rama.
Oh, Rama, yeah.
Yes.
And then the one at Niagara Falls, as you were
Mhm.
mentioning, Mike.
Yes, yeah.
That was a great
That
audience
was
everywhere we went.
wonderful, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Louise,
I
I'd like to
agree.
think that I'm a comedian too, but nobody else laughs. But maybe you and I could, put together an act and go on the road as well. I don't know. What do you think? Is there hope?
Well, we laughed when you tried to give SQuire the check the other day. We said, "Oh, that won't happen." But yeah, I think we could do that. It's interesting because a lot of my act is from the old TV shows and everything, which a lot of people don't remember anymore so much. But so some of the older people will appreciate.
Well,
some of
maybe
the
okay.
characters.
Let's just cut in then, and we got a lot of serious stuff to talk about. But this is a lot of fun, at least for me. And it's my show, so I can do what I want. But maybe no one will support it. But actually, it's not really my show. It's a gift, and what a privilege. You did impersonations. So I don't know. You've done Cher, you've done Carol Burnett, you've done lots. Jimmy Stewart, different people. Got to pull one out of the hat right now. Do something we
Well,
might remember.
Well, we're mentioning some of the older ones, and it's interesting because I always loved George Burns and Gracie Allen.
Yes.
Okay.
And I thought,
Yes.
well, how can a woman do George Burns? But I thought, well, why not?
So I wish I had my cigar here. I would do. I lived to be 100. When I was a boy, the Dead Sea was only sick.
So
That's great. That's great.
I love doing, and of course, Joan Rivers was one of my favorites. Can we talk here?
Oh.
And of course, now the other ones like Bart Simpson.
Hey, dude, what's happening, man? Nobody lay a finger on my butterfinger, man.
I love it.
I love them all. I
But
love them.
Katharine Hepburn was
Katharine
a-
Squire,
Hepburn.
what's it like waking up to Louise, that she's talking in a different voice all the time, a different person?
I never know who I'm waking up next to. That's it.
It's always exciting. Always exciting.
Okay, Julie, bring
Okay,
us down to
okay.
earth. Bring us down to
I
earth.
got to rein us back in here. Before we go into the God and Dog Winks, let's talk about the amazing way in which you both met and how Jesus is at the center of everything you do. I think we're going to have to just touch on this and come back. So let's begin
start.
it.
Yeah,
Let's
I
start.
want to hear that.
Well, actually, we met each other probably about 50 years ago, about the time that Schoolhouse Rock was about coming out, because I was running children's television at ABC, and Louise, she was in a show that was being produced by one of the producers of Saturday morning shows, Sid and Marty Krofft, and they did a traveling costume show for HR Puffin stuff. I don't know whether you got that in Canada or not, but the star of that show was Witchy Poo. And on the road, they hired Louise, and we were at Madison Square Gardens. I was there with my two young daughters and my first marriage, and they were about 7 or 9 or something like that. And 2,000 kids and their parents, and all of a sudden the place lit up when Witchy Poo came on stage. Long nose, green face, wart at the end of that nose.
Since that removed.
I had no idea what her name was then, but it turned out that we were working on a Saturday morning wraparound group that was going to come in and out of our Saturday morning cartoons, kind of like jingles on a radio station, you know, to identify ABC from the other networks. And so Captain Cool and the Kongs was what we were creating to do that. And they couldn't find a comedian. Well, I'm the network suit in town. And they said, well, we got a problem. We haven't got a girl yet for that. I said, well, how about the girl who played Witchy Poo? And they said, go get the girl with her. Go get the girl. Go get the girl with me. Okay, so they ended up hiring Louise. I had no idea that was even taking place until about 3 months later. That was the first time I ever met her. So what to me was just an offhand remark. How about the girl who played Witchy Poo? Was really a God nudge that put Louise into my life. God already had a plan a long, long time before. Doesn't he say that he knew us before we were in our mother's wombs? He already had a plan that we were going to be divinely aligned and that we were going to cross at some point, and that would always be a God wink when that happens, when those threads cross of divine alignment. We all have divine alignment. We just need to recognize it and to appreciate that it's God that is causing all that to happen.
Well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to come back, and I want to hear Louise's version of that story. And we're going to go a little deeper with SQuire and Louise. We're going to be right back after a short break.
Hi, I'm SQuire Rushnell. So what's a God wink? Well, it's what some people might call a coincidence. Others would say it's an answered prayer, or maybe, wow, what are the odds of that happening? It's like when you were a kid sitting at the big table and you looked up and you saw somebody you love looking back at you. Mom or dad or grandma, they gave you that little wink. You never said, what do you mean by that? You knew. It meant, hey kid, I'm thinking of you right now. Well, that's what a God wink is. Hey kid, I'm thinking of you.
Well, today we're talking with SQuire and Louise from Godwinks, and we want to get back to Louise. Could you please share your side of the story about how the two of you met all those years ago?
Well, you know, SQuire, who gave me my first job in television, he was kind of my mentor. And I would write to him every so often when things were happening in my career. And he would write back. He was always very nice, even though he was the network suit. It was always good to, you know, the young actors who were coming up. And so there was this, I was doing an off-Broadway show called Dream Stuff. And I hadn't seen SQuire in maybe 15 years. Yeah. And, you know, he was my mentor, but it was never anything romantic, obviously. But I was divorced. He was divorced. I get a note backstage saying that SQuire Rushnell's in the audience. He wants to see you after the show. I had no idea that it was a God wink that was about to happen. Wow. When we saw each other after the show, I looked at him and the Lord said to me, he's the one you're going to marry. And we went out and had coffee, and we had coffee every day since.
Every day since. Oh. Yeah. You even memorialized that in a note to your mom.
I did. I said, Mom, I'm going to marry SQuire Rushnell. She said, does he know that? I said, not yet.
Isn't that something?
Okay, so like, did you go out for supper that night or a bite to eat? Yeah. I just want to know who paid the bill that night.
Oh my goodness.
Louise. Isn't that normal?
Talk to us. I mean, the little clip we showed in between
Yeah.
about the God Winks and the Dog Winks book series, speaking to the hearts of people right now about you've come up with that name and how you see people having an encounter with God. Sometimes they miss it. Talk to us about that, about how we can be sure not to miss those encounters.
Well, we all have these little experiences, and we've always had a sense to saying, well, that's kind of a coincidence. But inside, we felt as though that's not really a coincidence. And so when we began this journey, we began to try to find out, what do you call a coincidence that isn't a coincidence? Didn't even realize at that point that in the Hebrew language, the word coincidence doesn't even exist, because if God is sovereign, what do you need that word for? But then in the dictionary, coincidence is described as two events that come together without apparent cause. Well, what we're talking about has a cause, and that cause is divine. And so when that little word God wink just came into my mind that day, I thought, wow, that's fun. God wink, kind of like Godsend, Godspeed, and put that in the manuscript, and all of a sudden, in place of coincidence, it filled the vacuum in the language. And I realized that as people started using it over and over and over again, and which they've been doing now for the last 20 years, and believe it or not, it's just getting at the tipping point now where it is in most people's language somewhere along the line.
That is so great. Sometimes it takes time, but I am so excited that it does. It seems like it's growing and growing, and that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I want to move on and say, as a New York Times best-selling author, how much of your success in business and in life has been because of luck versus hard work versus divine guidance?
Oh, the latter all the way. I don't think, I think luck is an overrated word, because if we consider the fact that we are not living in a random life, we aren't like, twigs floating down the stream to destinations unknown. Oh gosh, where are we going? I wonder what's going to be there.
Yeah.
Our life is not like that. There is a plan for every single one of us. Now, that doesn't mean that we're little robots. We got our hands on the steering wheel. God has given us the free will to have our hands on the steering wheel. We can go too fast. We can go too slow. We can get off the road altogether and just waste time on the side roads. But we are always on his map, on his GPS, God's positioning system. And the closer we get to him, the more we tune into him, talk to him through prayer, the better off we are, because he is then going to communicate to us through God winks, and we're going to get to where he wants us to go, not where we want to go.
Louise, let me ask you this question. From your perspective, what has been the glue that has held you together? I'm sure you've never had a difficult day with each other, but for the rest of us who do struggle, what has been your glue?
Well, I have to say, and I don't mean to be glib about this, but we've never had a fight. We truly haven't. I mean,
Wonderful.
we have disagreements, but we've never had a fight.
Yeah.
But what we do is, and we actually wrote a book about it, couples who pray the most intimate act between a man and a woman. We pray every day because it really is the most intimate act. When you bare your heart to your spouse and you just lay it all out there. And I remember Donna Summer, the great diva of rock and roll, who said when her husband, Bruce, and her would pray, they would leave their weapons outside the door and basically become spiritually naked and just talk to their Heavenly Father. And it kept their marriage together for so many years. And we feel the same way. It's like, we just lay it all out there. He says, cast all your burdens upon me because I care for you. It's very simple. And so we just talk to him like we're having with our bagel and cup of coffee. We just ask the Lord to join us in our bagel and cup of coffee, and we just talk to him.
We have a board meeting every single morning,
and
and we talk to God about who are the chairman of the board, of course.
Yeah.
We talk to him about things that we're doing that he might be interested in. We listen for things that he might want to communicate to us, and it's just a treasure.
And actually, he speaks to us during that time more than any other time because you're, as you were saying, SQuire, Squire, you zone in, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
But we were praying one day, and I came out of the prayer and I said to Squire, I really feel the Lord wants us to do something with dogs. And Squire said, dogs? We don't even own a dog. And I said, I know, but I just think that that's what the Lord wants us to do. Well, thus came Dog Winks.
Dog wink.
Yes, and we wrote about these are all God wink stories with dogs in the center. And of course, one of the stories was Ruby, and Ruby became a Netflix movie, Rescued by Ruby.
This year.
And it came from that prayer where the Lord just spoke to our hearts.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you know, this morning I was having a bagel, and I'm not trying to butter you up,
Oh my.
but I actually
use
was
cream
thinking
cheese.
about you guys. So if we'd been on the same time length, I might have called you. Prayer has been so important. You know what? We've gone over time, but we're going to take some more time. I want you to talk to us a little bit more about how you pray together. You've shared that half a year ago in the program, but just talk to the people today. How do you pray together and invite Jesus into the midst? Tell us what it's like for you guys.
It's so interesting you should say that, because when we would go and speak to churches, when we're talking about pray together, stay together, we have a 40-day prayer challenge. Church people would say to us, well, how do you do it? Is there a special room? Do you say special things? And we were surprised that
We thought that was kind of like saying, how do you walk? Doesn't everybody know? How do you pray? You know?
Yeah.
But people didn't know how because they had prayed separately.
Yes.
And the idea of praying together was really a foreign idea. And it's kind of like we were asking them to cross a huge bridge, and they didn't know what was on the other side. But the moment you step onto that bridge, we always promise, it becomes a footpath that's about this long. And it's amazing what happens when two people pray together consistently. What we do is we've always made the promise very easy. Pray together 5 minutes a day for 40 days. Just try it out. What do you got to lose? And just don't stop. Every day, some days you may have to do it in the back of a cab on the way to the airport. Some days you may have to text each other. Some days it may need to be on the phone. But just make sure that you pray together every day. And in over 10 years that we've been gathering these surveys, if you go to praystay.com, it tells you everything you need to know about praying together and staying together. That's our 501c3, pray together, stay together. And it tells you about how Baylor University, the Institute for Studies of Religion, is working with us. We gather the surveys and they do the analysis. And when you take a survey at the beginning of the 40-day prayer challenge, about 20 questions that are kind of normal things that have to do with marriage. How often do you argue? How often do you say appreciative things to each other? And then you take the survey again at the end of 40 days, you instantly get a report card. My report card, or your report card comes in the mail and in your email, and you see bar graphs. If you started out here on your bar graph with how many times you argue in a week, it's now down to here. And
What a
and
powerful
if,
tool.
and if you say appreciation in the beginning, well, it's about here. At the end, you are up here. You have concrete evidence that you have really achieved something, even though you know in your heart that now that you have figured out how to pray together, you're never going to stop.
Prayer works.
Well,
I think that's what you're saying.
Exactly. And guys, we so appreciate you coming on the show. Every time we get together, you are throwing nuggets at us. And thank you once again for being with us today on The Perspective.
Yeah, it's been
Thank you,
fantastic.
Julie.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Mike. Good
We'll
to
talk
see you.
soon. All right.
Take care. All right, stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back.
One of the things that I love about SQuire and Louise is that we're able to talk about serious things. We're able to joke. We're able to kibitz a bit. And And that is important. People are longing for some happiness, for some joy in their life. And a lot of times it seems like many people go through life like they've been weaned on lemon juice. Others kind of look like they could suck corn through a Coke bottle. I hope that's not you. I know that we have those moments. I get stuck in traffic and I'm thinking and I'm muttering things to myself, but I'm discovering that God by his Spirit is just saying, you need to chill. This is a moment that I can spend with you. A lot of times when I allow the circumstances of the moment to dictate into my life, it changes the way that I want to talk to people. I can be irritable. I can be cranky. I know that you might find that hard to believe, but I'm human just like you. And I need to be controlled by the Spirit. All this week, we've been talking from the book of James about controlling our tongue. And the Holy Spirit, when you invite him to dwell within you, he will guide you, just like, as James says, the bridle guides the horse, or the ship steers the rudder. And why do we need him to guide us? Well, in chapter 3 and verse 6 and 5 and 6, he talks about a forest fire, how it can be set ablaze by a little spark. And many times, you know as well as I do, that a word that is spoken at the wrong time can cause so much devastation. It can wound people. I remember about 10, 11 years ago, I was pastoring in a church and it was tough going. And there was a young guy who looked at me and he said, "You are done. You should just quit. There's no more hope for you." It was devastating. I mean, it wasn't that church was bad or anything like that, but that was just the way he was looking, and he shot his mouth off. And I remember how much that wounded me and how much I had to bring that actually back to God and saying, "God, is what he's saying truth?" And the Spirit of God said, "No, it's a lie." And you know what? Here I am today. And it's only by God's grace, what we're doing in our local church we've planted, what was happening here with the perspective. We thank God for that. I thank God for each of you and how you participate. But there are words that you speak that can change someone's direction. There are words that bring life. Let me give you an example. I've written these down. It says, here's a word that gives life. You look sharp in that suit. Do you ever look nice in that dress? Or you might be the best potato cook in the world. I love these potatoes. I got friends in PEI, so I threw that one out to them. Or maybe you've been frustrated with your husband and you say, "I really appreciate you washing the dishes," as opposed to saying, "It's about time." But there are words that bring death. You know them as well as I do. About time you carried out the garbage, or about time that you did this. Today would have been a perfect day to paint the bedroom. Instead, you're out washing the car, that toy that you like so much. Have you ever thought about how you speak into people's lives, what you say to them? Because words do matter, and words can bring encouragement. Encouragement helps us to keep going, to keep pressing on. And I want to invite you today to be people who use your tongue to communicate words of love and hope. To say to your son, your daughter, your wife, your husband, "I appreciate you. I am thankful for you. Thank you for what you do." And as you do that, you're letting the Spirit of God live through you, love through you, and speak through you.